I was out for a Sunday drive recently when I spotted something on the side of the road. Someone was cleaning out a house and put a whole bunch of cool junk out for free. While I was tempted to take it all home, I had to settle for just one piece. So I grabbed the nicest looking one and headed home. And here it is, a 1937 Philco radio cabinet. It's a mess, but it's got lots of potential. This is from the same era as another Philco radio that I refinished recently. You may remember this radio from one of my previous videos. This is a 1936 or 37 Philco that I refinished, and this one still had the electronics in it when I got it, so I didn't try to transform it into anything new. This new cabinet, on the other hand, is already missing the electronics, so it's a clean slate. I can do whatever I want with it. There are countless directions I could go with it. The possibilities are endless, which is exactly the problem. I don't always do so well when handed a blank canvas. A wide open playing field can be overwhelming to me. Too many options, too many possibilities can slow me down to a full stop, and at that point I really need someone to help me get out of the rut. Which brings me to the sponsor of today's video, BetterHelp. BetterHelp is a service which connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. I myself have benefited immensely from therapy over the years. It's helped me to identify behavior patterns in my life which have held me back from truly growing and accomplishing my goals. My difficulties in making decisions, for instance, when faced with so many possible choices, has been a big stumbling block in my life. But therapy has helped me to find a way through it. It's given me tools that I can use whenever I feel like I'm getting stuck, and that's an invaluable resource to have. I know from personal experience that sometimes the hardest part about going to therapy is taking that first step, and BetterHelp makes that first step as easy as possible. To use BetterHelp, first go to their site, and you can use my link, betterhelp.com/Dashner, which will get you a 10% discount on your first month of therapy. Once you're on their site, you answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will match you with a professional who has years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. You can do it all from your phone or computer, video chat, or messaging, however you feel most comfortable. It's the easiest possible way to start talking to a therapist. Thank you, BetterHelp. Regardless of how I decide to repurpose this cabinet, I know it's at least going to need some repair and refinishing. So I'm going to start there. And first I'll take this tuner dial thing off. Very carefully. The speaker cloth has a hole in it, so I'm going to take that off too and see if I can get some replacement cloth for it. There it is. Pretty filthy. Before I strip off the finish, I'm going to do some veneer repairs, starting back here at the bottom corner. And now I can start stripping off the finish. And I'm going to use QCS stripper for this. I get asked a lot, how do I decide whether I want to scrape a finish off or use a chemical stripper? And just for the record, I really don't ever sand a finish off, so that's not really even something I think about. But in this case, a spot like these fins, that I really don't want to use a scraper on that. That would just be too tedious, and it's just too hard to not damage something using this scraper on these curved shapes. it's just a lot easier to use the stripper on that. And also up on top, where the tuning dial goes, that has all that veneer that runs in different directions, and that's another spot I wouldn't want to use a scraper, because generally I like to scrape in the direction of the grain, and that's just not going to happen when you've got all those pieces going every which way. So that's another great spot for the stripper. And this finish would scrape off really easily, probably, if I wanted to. You can see it just basically turns to dust. It's pretty crispy. But again, I wouldn't try it on these fins or in that spot with all the veneer. And I'm not going to do it here either, because the QCS really works well on this kind of old lacquer. So I'm just going to use it over this whole thing. Okay, got it all stripped, and it looks great already. There's no finish on it now, it's just the bare wood. So already looking really good, so I'm happy with that. There are, though, some things that need to be fixed if you look closer, such as that veneer piece that's missing there, and some other little things like that all around. So I'm going to work on those repairs now. It's time to repair this little veneer issue here. I've got a new piece to glue in there. First thing I want to do is straighten this line a bit. It's going to make it easier. I just realized that this is one of the areas where I just re-glued the veneer down, the loose veneer. So it might be a little tough to get this off. There it goes. There's a spot here and here where the wood under the top veneer is missing, so I'm just going to glue in some pieces of veneer to build those up. Okay, so this is obviously lighter than the other veneer. This is walnut, but this is also walnut, but this is darker. So that's easy though, easy to fix. I'll just probably use some stain on this later. There's another veneer chip right here on the back edge, and that's so small that I'm just going to use a hard fill stick, melt it in there, and that'll fix that. And once it's cool, I can just smooth it out. Put a little more over here. That'll do. There is a small dent in the side here in the walnut veneer. I'm going to try to steam that out. I'll just apply some water to it first, and then use a hot soldering iron with a damp rag. Well, that worked out really well. It came out almost entirely. It was right here. I can still feel a little bit of a dent there, but it's a lot better. Well, after some thought, I decided that the most fun way to repurpose this cabinet would be to turn it into a guitar amplifier. So I ordered a bunch of parts and they just arrived. And my plan is to build a copy of a Fender Champ guitar amplifier. If you know guitar amps, you probably know what that is. It's a pretty simple design. This is the chassis I'm going to use. It's a pretty nice chassis. Unfortunately, no one's going to see it. It's going to be hidden inside the cabinet. So I started by soldering the components to the board. And I'm not going to get into too much detail because I don't know how many of my viewers have any interest in the electronics side of this project. And also, I'm not an expert with this stuff. And if you're looking to learn how to do this kind of thing, there's plenty of other resources out there, people who know this stuff a lot better than I do. So don't do anything I'm doing here. But if you are into guitars and guitar amps and things like that, I do have a second channel called Dashner Guitars, where I do post more of this sort of thing, if you want to check that out. And at some point in the near future, I'll be posting a different version of this video to the Dashner Guitars channel, and it'll focus more on the guitar amp side of things. So my plan is to install this into the back of the cabinet where the radio used to be. I'm going to build a little wood platform to put the amp on. So first I have to figure out how tall that needs to be. This amp only has one control, the volume, which is also the on-off switch. The switch is built into the volume control. So I only need to use one, well actually two of the holes in front of the cabinet. One for the volume and then the other one for the input jack. I needed to find a good big knob to stick on that shaft. And I just happened to have this old amplifier chassis thing I picked up for free somewhere, which has really big knobs on it. And one of those knobs is going to be perfect for this project. Well, it looks like I'm going to need to move this fuse holder to the back. It just sticks out too far and I'm not able to get the chassis close enough to the front of the radio so that this sticks out far enough so I can get the knob on. So if I move that, then I can move it closer and I'll have more of this shaft to stick the knob onto. It's unfortunate that I'm doing it now after I've already got everything in here, but it's the way it is. I'm just going to try to carefully cover everything up so I don't get metal shavings all over everything. And there it is. As I'm starting to figure out how to put this all together, I'm realizing that the pilot light that I bought for the amp is not going to work for this project. So I had this old amplifier lying around. I think this is from an old tape player. And the pilot light in this is going to work a lot better. It's got a mounting tab that's going to be perfect for what I'm trying to do here. So I just drilled out the rivets and screwed it into the cabinet. Okay, let's see if the light works. There it is. So now there is a little piece of glass that goes in here. And originally there would have been a tuning dial behind this, so there wouldn't be a hole there. I don't have the tuner dial. So I'm going to try to figure out something to do with the glass to maybe color it somehow so it's still semi-transparent, but not completely clear. So you'll just kind of have the glow from the light there. Well, after thinking about this a little more, I realized that darkening that piece of glass isn't going to work. What I really need to do is put something behind the face of the dial. So an idea I came up with was to use this reflector. Now on its own, it's too bright orange. So I'm going to try and spray it with some brown toner lacquer to darken it up a bit. So it'll still let some of the light through, but it won't be as bright orange. I think that'll work. I'm going to use this hole here for the input jack, and I've got this 1/4-inch barrel jack here that I'm going to use for that. It's going to go into here. The only thing is I need some kind of a washer to go in the front. So I found this in a big box of old hardware I have, and I think it's going to look good. It's already aged, and the color of it kind of matches the dial face, and so does the aging on it. So I'm going to use that, but it's a little bit too small, so I'm going to try to ream that out a little bit. There it goes. So I bought some new speaker cloth to replace the original, because the original has a hole in it, but I got the dimensions wrong, and it's too short. So the long dimension should have been going this way, if that makes sense. So I'd have to put it like this to make it fit, and then that would be going the wrong direction. Anyway, I'm not going to use that. So I'm just going to stick with the original. The hole was right here. It's still there, but I just kind of glued down the loose threads, and just going to go with it. Just call it patina. It'll be fine. Now I have to figure out what I want to do about the speaker. I have the original speaker that came with the radio, but I know I don't want to use this. I have a couple of other speakers that are specifically made for guitar amps, and there are 4 mounting studs in there for the original speaker, which of course fits perfectly. But the 2 speakers that I have, 12-inch and the 10-inch, neither one of them fit. The 12-inch is too big and the 10-inch is too small. So I don't know what size the speaker is considered to be. Maybe it's a 11, which would be really unusual these days. Maybe in 1937 that was normal. But this is the 10-inch speaker I have, and this is the one I want to use. I feel like it's going to be easier to make the one that's too small fit rather than try to get the one that's too big in there. So now I got to think about this a little bit and figure out a way to get this mounted in there, and then I'll show you how I did it. Most of this cabinet is covered in walnut veneer, but there are these trim pieces going around the top and the bottom and down around where the speaker is that are not walnut veneer. I'm not sure what kind of wood they are, but whatever it is, it's not the most attractive wood. So I want to darken it just a little bit with some antique walnut gel stain. And in this area around the speaker, there are some exposed plywood edges where you can see the edge of the plywood. It's not very attractive, so I'm going to darken that with a marker. And this isn't a Sharpie. It's a marker that I got in an art supply store. So if you're looking for furniture touch-up markers, you might want to try an art supply store. They usually have a pretty large selection of markers in all different colors. They're not specifically made for furniture, of course, but in my experience, they work pretty well. Time to spray on some shellac. Now that the wood is sealed with a couple coats of shellac, it's time to add the Philco decal. And this is a water slide decal. I got this sheet of decals from somewhere online years ago, I don't remember where. And the first thing I'm going to do is put the decal into some lukewarm water and let it soak in there for maybe 10-20 seconds until it looks like the decal is starting to loosen from the backing. And then I just slide the decal off onto the radio and try to get it positioned correctly. I have a little piece of tape on the radio to mark where the center point is to make it a little easier. I put one more coat of shellac on to seal in the Philco label, and now I'm just going to buff it a little bit with some fine steel wool and wax, and then I think I can start putting the whole thing together. And now it's time to mount the speaker into the cabinet, and I had to remove the two studs on the sides because they were in the way of the speaker, but I kept the one on the top because I'm going to use that, and I left the one on the bottom just because it's not in the way. So I'm using the one on the top, and I'm just going to put a nut on that. And then in the three other positions, I just used a screw to keep the speaker in place. And this looks like it's going to work well. I couldn't think of anything to do with the two extra holes on the bottom. So for now, I'm just going to fill them with these hole plugs. And I sprayed these with some brown toner to tone them down a bit and make them blend in a little bit more. All right, let's plug it in and see how it sounds. Just brought home my latest find. Just brought home my latest find. Just brought home my latest find. See how it goes. Just brought home my latest find. Just brought home my latest find. Just brought home my latest find. And I think this piece kind of looks a bit chunky. Think this piece kind of looks a bit chunky. Think this piece kind of looks a bit chunky. Chunky, 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 chunky. Just brought home my latest find. Just brought home my latest find. Just brought home my latest find. Want to try some oxalic acid. Want to try some oxalic acid. Want to try some oxalic acid. Acid, acid, acid. Just brought home my latest find. Just brought home my latest find. Just brought home my latest find.